2024 was full of couch co-op games. In fact, there were so many that I just couldn't include them all in my top 30 list. And some I never even got a chance to play. So let's talk about another 43 couch co-op games that came out in 2024. And I'm just going to talk about these in alphabetical order. And we're just going to quickly go through them. I'm not going to do a full in-depth review. AK-xolotl together, or AK-xolotl. I don't know how you actually say this game, but basically you play as these axolotls that have guns. So this game actually originally came out in 2023, but the DLC came out this year that added co-op. I really like this game. It's another top-down roguelite game, very similar to Enter the Gungeon, and it has a fun metal soundtrack. This is another one that could have fit into my top 30, but I just didn't really play it enough. All You Need Is Help. This is a game fully built around co-op gameplay. In fact, there is no single player mode whatsoever. It's basically a physics-based puzzle game. The games that I can most closely compare it to would be maybe Death Squared and Snipper Clips, but from a top-down view. And like I said, you need to have at least one other player to start the game up, but you can play it with up to 4. However, if you are playing it with only 2 players, it's a little bit confusing how you get it started. You have to press Y and then go into dual mode. So there will still be 4 characters on the screen, but one player will control 2 characters at the same time, and they'll each be designated to a different thumbstick. It's a much better experience with 4 players. Ants Took My Eyeballs. This one is a 2D platformer roguelike, and it's one that I really enjoyed. It was just really close to fitting into my top 30, but I just didn't get a chance to play it enough. Asterogues. This is another roguelite, but this one is from a top-down perspective with some twin-stick controls. Another one that I really liked. This one kind of feels like Enter the Gungeon or Neurovoider or something like that. I definitely need to play this game some more. Backstreet Warriors. This is a Pico 8 game, and it was created by Seba Games Dev, who is known for Fight and Rage, which is often considered to be one of the best modern beat-em-ups ever. This game is definitely polished and it feels really good, but it's a Pico 8 game, so it's very short. You can beat this game in under 10 minutes. The combat here is really simple, and it kind of feels like a Game Gear or Master System type of game. But basically there are 99 enemies. You and your teammate just join together and try to defeat all of the enemies. And that's it. There's only one level. So this one is more of like a tech demo of some sort. But I wanted to mention it because it's just a really interesting game. And if you're a fan of Fight and Rage, you probably want to try it. This one is a little bit weird. This is Batman Returns on the Sega Genesis. So this is actually a Super Nintendo game that's being ported to the Sega Genesis, and it comes out on Christmas Day. The reason why I wanted to mention it is this has some updates over the Super Nintendo version. Now you can have more enemies on screen, it's a higher resolution, and for the first time ever, this game can now be played in 2-player co-op. The Sega Genesis is my favorite console of all time, so I'm really excited to try this one out. Brotato. So this is another one of those games that originally was just a single player game, but recently they added a co-op option. This game pretty much plays like Vampire Survivors. Basically it's a roguelite and you move around and all of the attacking and everything takes place automatically. Each wave of enemies you gain power-ups and you can level up your stats. I really enjoy these types of games. They're fun for just a quick pick up and play. Casting Please. PLZ, I'm not sure. This is a free game, and I actually kind of like the concept here, but the controls were the main issue. I couldn't get controllers to fully connect, so I had to use 2 players on one keyboard, and that just kind of sucks. But basically, one player picks up the other player, so they're going to be doing all of the moving, while the second player controls most of the magic. So it does work really well as a co-op game, but I mainly just had an issue with the controls. Maybe there's something I'm doing wrong. Cyborg Force. This game was made for Neo Geo hardware. It's pretty much a run-and-gun shooter similar to Metal Slug or Contra, but the graphics and the gameplay itself are kind of lacking. It just feels like this game could have used a lot more polish, and it's overall pretty generic. Death's Toll. This is one that I never got around to playing. I do kind of like the visuals, it has some good pixel art, but I don't know much else about this game. No one has really been talking about it. Diesel Legacy. This is another one that I just barely tried out, but it's basically a fighting game where you can do 2-on-2 battles. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like you can play through the story mode this way, but there's an arcade mode where you and a friend can team up and fight 2 other opponents. I like the hand-drawn art style, but none of the characters really stood out to me. Dig Beat. This is a free game, and it's described as a rhythm-digging arcade game. So the objective is to dig down deeper into the earth, but you have to move in a rhythm. So it kind of plays like Cadence of Hyrule. I like the simple pixel art here, and the black and white is kind of a cool look. I definitely need to play this one some more too. Garbanzo Quest. Now this is a game that I'm really familiar with. I played through the early access version and highlighted it in my best of 2022 video, so it's really good. This is an excellent 2D platformer, and I definitely intend on playing through the full version at some point. I just haven't quite gotten around to it. There's just so many games. I actually really love this game. Good Boy Galaxy. This game originally came out on the Game Boy Advance, but the home console versions and Steam version added 2-player co-op, and these levels are exclusive to these ports, and they're made specifically with co-op in mind. So you're gonna need to work together to solve puzzles and navigate through the levels. I really love the art style here, and some of the music is really great too. Go Fight Fantastic. So this is pretty much a top-down dungeon crawler / action RPG. It has some really cool hand-drawn cutscenes here, and you could play the game in 3-player co-op. Played it for about an hour with my daughter and my friend, and nothing really stood out to me to make it qualify as one of the best co-op games of the year, but maybe we need to spend more time with it as well. Karate Kid Street Rumble. With all the attention from the Cobra Kai and the upcoming new Karate Kid movie, it's probably the best time to actually make a Karate Kid beat 'em up. I like that this was based off of the original Karate Kid movies, not the Cobra Kai series. Of course you could play as Daniel LaRusso, which is a given, but you can also play as Miyagi, as well as Ali and Kumiko. So it's a pretty interesting lineup of characters, and you could play it with up to 4 players. Again, this is one that I did enjoy, but it just doesn't really add anything new, and the combat and everything about it just feels a little bit generic. That being said, if you're a fan of the franchise, or just looking for a 4-player arcade-style beat-em-up, I still recommend this game. The Last Stand of Camp Zombie. This is a pretty straightforward twin-stick shooter with some roguelite elements. Basically, it's like an arena. You're gonna have hordes of zombies coming at you wave by wave, and you wanna just survive by picking up weapons and taking out each wave. Once you complete that, you have a little bit of time to gather some more resources and prepare for the next wave. The gameplay here is pretty shallow. It doesn't really add anything new, but what it does pretty well. I also really like the art style here. It kind of has like a hand-drawn comic book style. Overall, there's nothing special here, but it is a solid twin-stick shooter. Leif's Adventure. This is a game I've had on my wish list for a really long time, but it's basically an action platformer with some Metroidvania type of elements. Once you get through the intro of the game, you can play it in co-op. The second player takes control of the ghost, and this is kind of an assist mode. They're able to stun enemies to help you fight, and they're also able to use their magic to reveal items and platforms and things like that to help you navigate through the level. I wasn't the biggest fan of the art style here, but I do think that the game is pretty fun and has a decent co-op assist mode. Maiden Cops is one of the lesser known games on this list, and it's also the most perverted game on this list. So just know that before you go in to play this. This one's a pretty straightforward beat 'em up. It definitely doesn't add anything new to the genre, and it's not trying to. If you can get past the hyper-sexualized stuff here, it's a pretty decent beat 'em up. And another late release in 2024 is Maki Paw of Fury. This is an arcade-style beat-em-up where you play as these cute animal characters. This one definitely reminds me of the Cowboys of Moo Mesa game or Bucky O'Hare. You're able to choose out of 3 different characters, and they each have their own stats. But I really like the hand-drawn art style here. Visually, the game just looks really great. And overall, it's definitely a solid beat-em-up. Manda Duo. And this game actually really stood out to me just because the co-op is really unique. On its surface, it just looks like a endless runner platformer. One player takes control of the character and you're constantly running down and trying to get to the bottom of the stage to complete the level. But where it gets interesting is the second player is using a gun, and you use the mouse to control the gun. This player will be taking care of all of the enemies. They also have to shoot the main character to recharge his energy. This is definitely a really interesting concept, but I felt like the execution was kind of lacking. But I do want to play this game a little bit more. It's just a cool concept. Monarchy. So from the looks of this game, it definitely reminds me of Kingdom: Two Crowns. But outside of that, I don't know much more about this game. I have yet to play it. The original Night Slashers is one of my favorite old school arcade beat 'em ups, and I have covered it a few times on this channel. Well, recently there has been a remake of Night Slashers. Unfortunately, it has not been favorably reviewed. But one benefit it has over the original game is that now you can play it in 4-player co-op, when the original had just 3-player. So that's cool. You're also able to choose the new soundtrack with remixed songs or the original arcade soundtrack. It's always nice to have those options. But unfortunately, the visuals here are greatly lacking. It just looks like a really low budget game. And there's still some glitches here and there, so it definitely could have used more polish. But if you are a fan of the original game, I still think it's worth trying out. Just lower your expectations. And if you're only going to play one or the other, definitely just play the original one. Nimbusfall. This game I just briefly tried out with my daughter. It's basically a 2D action platformer where you only fight bosses. I like the really simplified pixel art here, but the controls kind of felt off to me. This is another one that I should definitely play some more. Pico Park 2. Okay, I actually really liked the first Pico Park. I was excited to play this one out too, but the Steam version for some reason, I don't know if I was doing something wrong, but I couldn't get it to connect to controllers. So once again, the only way I could play it was with multiple players on a keyboard, and I didn't even feel like trying that. So this is one I definitely need to go back and try. River City Saga: Three Kingdoms Next. So this is the follow-up to River City Saga: Three Kingdoms, which came out back in 2022, and it's a continuation of the Kunio-kun series. So if you're familiar with River City Ransom, this is pretty much that kind of gameplay, but set in the Three Kingdoms world. Much like most River City Ransom or Kunio games, you're just gonna go around and fight a bunch of enemies. You can pick up items, you can pick up money, and you can upgrade your stats. This one continues on with the exploration aspect as well. In every area, you're gonna have objectives, so you're gonna have to go around and try to find specific bosses to battle. This doesn't really change the format too much, other than you can ride a motorcycle for some reason, but it's pretty much more of the same. So if you like the Kunio-kun series, you're definitely gonna like this one too. Rabbit and Steel. This one is another co-op roguelite, but this one plays like a shoot 'em up. I've only picked up and played this one a very small amount, but I did enjoy it. It has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam. Run Tekila Run. This game, I don't really know what to say about it. I tried it out a little bit with my friend. It seems to be kind of like a dungeon crawler, but with the weirdest sound effects ever. And I think it's trying to be funny, but it's just very janky and none of the humor really was working for me. Sentient Steel. This is one that I just barely booted up once. It's basically like a run and gun shooter with some Mega Man elements as well. I do kind of like the art style here, but overall, it didn't feel that original to me. Servonauts. I've heard a lot of people really like this game. I played it a little bit in 3-player co-op, and it's kind of like an Overcooked-like. But instead of cooking, you're kind of running this mechanic shop in space or something like that. You're gonna need to connect a lot of tubes and run oil through and stuff like that. I actually do like this game, and I plan on playing it some more. Shepards. So this is a free game, and from the looks of it, it looked like it could have been a really good art game. And I do like the concept. You play as this girl, and the second player plays as this wolf, and you have to work together to get through the levels. And there's a lot of musical elements. The problem is, it just needs a lot more polish. The game itself wasn't very fun to control. It was kind of rough around the edges. I'd like to see this game have a little bit more work done on it before I'd want to play it again. Slam and Roll. This is a game I have not played yet. From the looks of it, it is a single screen platformer, similar to like Bubble Bobble or Snow Bros. But you throw basketballs and baseballs at your enemies instead. I do like the pixel art here. Smells Like a Mushroom. This is a third-person shooter made by the same team that made Kamikaze Veggies, and I really liked that game. But this one is more focused on shooting and less on stealth and platforming. I barely got a chance to try this one out, but it seems pretty solid. The Smurfs Dreams. This is another game that I did not get around to playing, but basically it's a 3D platformer where you play as Smurf characters. The game actually has some pretty good reviews, so it's something I definitely need to try out. Snow Bros Wonderland. So this is taking the classic Snow Bros games and putting it into a 3D platformer. This is another one that I did not play, and honestly, I don't think this one looks that great. If you have played it, let me know what you thought. Storm Edge. This is another pixel art, top-down roguelike game. This one kind of reminded me of Wizard of Legend or Ember Knights, something like that. I like the art style here. It's really simple, but it looks good. But the gameplay didn't really suck me in. Have you guys played this one yet? Surmount. So this is a game that's all about climbing. You and a partner are going to climb this mountain called Mount Ohm, and apparently nobody has been able to climb it before. The mechanics here are kind of weird, and they take a bit of getting used to, but basically you climb with one hand at a time. So then you spin your body around and throw it up, and then one of the hands will grab on, and you keep doing this to get higher up the mountain. The main downside here is it's just not very intuitive, but again, once you get the hang of it, it gets a lot better. Each hand is dedicated to a different button, ZR and ZL. So you're going to want to be holding those buttons in to be able to grab onto things. While you're climbing, you're going to need to keep an eye on your stamina. Once it's depleted, you will fall down. This is a game that definitely got some mixed reviews, but I personally really liked it. It's just a fun, lighthearted game, and you could play it with the whole family, if they can wrap their head around the controls. Tmnt Arcade, Wrath of the Mutants. So there were 3 big Ninja Turtle games that came out this year. We had Splintered Fate, Mutants Unleashed, and we had Wrath of the Mutants. I think that this one is the worst of the bunch. This one originally came out in arcades, so you could play it at Chuck E. Cheese or Dave & Buster's. And I actually did play it at Chuck E. Cheese, they have it in my town. And this one definitely feels like it's aimed towards kids. There's not a lot of substance here, but basically, in 2024, they ported it to home consoles. I wouldn't recommend this game really, but if you are a big fan of TMNT and you just want to play all the games, it's still worth trying out. It's basically a beat 'em up that you can play in 4 players. Not a very good one. Have you ever heard of Unbearable? This is a fully 3D survival horror co-op game. You can play through the entire game in split-screen co-op. It's clearly an homage to games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Unfortunately, it still has some bugs, and overall the game's just pretty janky, but it still has some charm here. Like the AI-generated voiceovers are kind of funny. I don't know, I might have a higher tolerance for janky gameplay as I'm used to playing early 3D games from the PS1 and N64. So even though this game is not great, I still enjoyed it. And I've been following it for quite a while. I played it when it was first in early access, and now the full release just came out in 2024. Would I recommend this? Absolutely not. If you have a friend that has a lot of patience, maybe you will have some fun with this one. Unplugged. This is a game that I just randomly found on Steam, and it's really cheap. You can get it for about $6. I haven't played it yet, but it looks like it was built around co-op, so maybe it's good. It looks like a mix between Unraveled 2 and Biped. Now let's talk about World of Goo 2. I never played the original World of Goo. I heard of it, but I wasn't really familiar with the gameplay. It's basically a physics-based puzzle game, and you can play it with up to 4 players in local co-op. This one came out on home computers, but it's exclusive to the Switch as far as home consoles go. And the co-op mode is exclusive to the Switch, so that's why I really wanted to talk about it. But basically, each player takes control of a cursor, and you're able to move around to manipulate the goo in order to work together to solve the puzzles. It's kind of an interesting game, because the goo moves around realistically like any fluid would. And when you're playing with friends, the first player is the only one that can take control of the camera. And this is probably a good thing, so you're not fighting over that. I do think the gameplay is very unique. However, I do think that it gets kind of repetitive after a while. That being said, I think this one's good for casual players. Anyone could pick this one up and play it. And then there's a few early access games that came out this year. I haven't played these ones yet. I'm kind of just waiting for the full versions. Master Quest. So this is like a Zelda-like where you can actually build dungeons. I really love the art style here, and the concept seems fun. I definitely do plan on playing this one. Rotwood. So this is like a cartoony beat 'em up. It kind of reminds me of Castle Crashers. Still haven't played this one either, but it seems like people are really enjoying it. And then we have Unrailed 2. This is another one I haven't tried yet, but it looks really good. I did thoroughly enjoy the first Unrailed game. Hopefully this one has more of the same, but with some improvements. So there you go, 43 couch co-op games that came out in 2024. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our video about the top 30 couch co-op games of 2024. And thanks for watching.